Hi Skate Pals, I'm Elizabeth from Geek Girl Skates, and in this video what I want to do is to talk about how to perfect your forward plate stall. Now the forward plate stall is kind of one of those bedrock tricks. It's going to help you to be able to get so many other really cool tricks, but we need to build this consistency at the beginner stage so that you're nailing this trick every time. So this advice is going to be coming from my own experience and struggles of learning how to do forward plate stalls, as well as some of the advice that I received at the time and what really helped, as well as from watching other beginner skaters, and I kind of see a lot of similar things coming up, and so I wanted to make a video that addresses those sorts of issues. So before we get started, I am a huge supporter of wearing safety equipment in the skate park because skating is dangerous. So you're going to want to wear your helmet, wrist guards, elbow guards, and you're going to want your knee pads. So let's get started. Okay, so before we even try a plate stall, we're going to spend some time warming up. And we're going to warm up our brain and we're going to warm up our muscles. So to do this, we're going to pump the ramp back and forth a few times, get our body moving, getting the feel of the ramp. I want to see my wheels coming to, just under the coping, but not quite touching the coping, because we're going to go there in a few minutes. And I'm going to do some drop-ins. Remember what that feels like, because when you do a plate stall, you're going to be essentially doing a fakie drop-in. So if you can do a forward one and you're feeling confident with that, then doing a fakie drop-in, it's no bother. Okay, so let's do some warm-ups.
I know it is so tempting when you first get to the skate park to just try and dive straight into learning new tricks, but when I do this, honestly I just get really frustrated with myself because I haven't given myself a chance to warm up. So make sure you spend a good 10-15 minutes at least just practicing the tricks you already know how to do, or just having a skate around and getting comfortable with having wheels on your feet again. And when you're doing this, make sure you're staying nice and low. You want to make sure you have a nice split stance so you've got the stability factor, and you want to make sure that your feet are always under control. And that might sound a bit silly, but I do this and sometimes I start to flail, and it's because I haven't given myself a chance to do a good warm-up. An optional warm-up, and this actually really helped me when I was first learning how to stall, is to find a good ledge or a small rail if you have access to these features at your park, and practice stepping up and finding your balance on the rail or the ledge. And then once you feel comfortable with that, you can roll up to it and find your balance. And after that, I would try jumping on with 2 feet. And this will help to get you the feel of what it's like to stall, but without the terrifying aspect of actually doing it on a half pipe.
Now that we're all warmed up, let's just have a quick look at what a good plate stall looks like, and then we'll have a look at what some of the common issues are.
For me, a good forward plate stall is when you're rolling along, you come up the transition, you're landing with both feet on the coping at more or less the same time. Your weight is pretty much on top of the coping. Your butt shouldn't be sticking out behind you and your chest shouldn't be tipping forwards. And then you get some good hang time and you re-enter the transition on your own terms. So you're going back when you're ready to, not because your wheels just decide they want to roll back in. And yeah, that's what is a good plate stall for me.
A common issue that I see among beginner skaters is where they can get one foot on the coping, but they can't get that second foot on. And I find that a lot of this comes down to not having enough speed. And this is something that I was stuck on for so long, and I was so frustrated because I couldn't get that second foot up. One of the best pieces of advice that I received when I was learning how to do this was to bend my knees more. And what that means is when you drop in and you bend your knees just as you're coming up out of the transition, and it means you get a little bit of a push or a little bit of a pump, just like when you're pumping the ramp back and forth, and it gives you that little extra momentum to get onto the coping.
Once you do have enough speed, if you step onto the coping with one foot, you should be able to transfer your weight over to that foot and step up with your other foot. This still totally counts as a stall in my mind, especially as you're learning and just starting to get comfortable with stalling on the coping.
So the second issue I commonly see is where skaters drop in with too much speed, and they either completely miss the coping altogether and they just land on the deck, or they roll on the coping and just roll off. The solution to this is to try and drop in with a little bit less speed. So I find that if I drop in with my knees bent a little bit more, it slows me down. Whereas if I'm very upright when I drop in, it means that I can go a bit faster. So it could be to do with managing your speed on your drop in. Another thing to bear in mind, and this is both if you're not quite reaching the coping or if you're rolling too far, is to think about your weight distribution. Like, you want your weight either upright on the coping, or you want it slightly in the transition itself. You don't really want your weight coming this way, because that means you're going to roll off the coping itself. Another thing to keep in mind when you're doing a plate stall is where you're actually looking. So are you looking at the coping itself? Are you looking inside the transition? Are you looking off into the distance? And I find what works for each person varies a little bit. So you might try different things to see what works for you. If you find that you're just rolling off onto the deck, try looking inside the transition. But if you find that you're not quite getting high enough, then try looking a little bit higher, and this will help to get your momentum going in the right direction. I definitely think that there is like this perfect combination of the right amount of speed, your sighting, your landing on the coping, and your weight is going to be distributed perfectly. Honestly, it just takes practice and trying to find what works best for you, because honestly, what works for one person might not work for another person. Once you do figure out the perfect combination, don't let it go. Just try and practice it over and over as many times as you can so you can really lock it in, and it just becomes, like second nature. This is like a bedrock skill for learning so many other really cool stalls and slides, and from here you can really grow your skate park Trictionary. I hope this video has helped. Let me know in the comments if you have any other suggestions or tips or tricks for learning plate stalls, and keep roller skating.